and we'll start the recording in a moment. Thank you, Kate.
Okay, thank you very much, Lou, for that introduction. Just to recap, my name is Katy Wareham Morris and I'm the course leader for Media and Culture at the university. I'm very excited to talk to you about studying media and culture at university, and then a little bit later on, more specifically, our course that we offer here at Worcester. So hopefully that you can see that I've changed slide there. Just a little bit of context really about media and film as an academic discipline. We have roots in many disciplines. Our subject itself is multi and interdisciplinary. We're informed by the arts and the creative arts, graphics, also architecture, also drama and theatre, but also the humanities, and particularly literature, thinking about the way they study literary texts, the way they use historical, social and cultural context to inform their analysis and their readings, the type of close reading and textual analysis that they do, and the way that they apply theory into their understanding and critical analysis of literary text. We take that into our discipline also. The social sciences inform our discipline, particularly sociology and psychology. The computer sciences interest us because of the pervasive nature of the internet and the way the internet changes scope and scale, but also in the way that we think about big data, the way our data is being used, and things like algorithms, for example. The performing arts particularly is interesting to us in terms of theories of performance and what we can learn about masking roles, personae and identities. We're also informed by what's going on in the real world, so we keep a very keen eye on the creative and professional industries and their forms and modes of practice. So you might readily think of the screen industries, so what's going on in the TV and film industries, the British film industry as compared to the American film industry, for example. But we're also very interested in visual cultures. So signs and symbols interest us, and signs and symbols manifest themselves in lots of different ways through art, as I've said, but also advertising, architecture, fashion, different styles, trends that become sort of the moment or of the zeitgeist are very interesting to us as media and film scholars. We also keep up to date with what's going on in media organisations. So, for example, changes to advertising and marketing standards, for example, what's going on in the printed news. That may be because there's been some type of scandal. You might be familiar in recent years with the outcomes of the Leveson inquiry, for example, and how that changed people's attitudes and perceptions towards printed news journalism, as an example. We're also interested in what's going on in professional bodies. So I mentioned advertising standards, for example, but our industries are often regulated, and we have to think about who's regulating them, who funds that regulation and why, who's being censored, who's being protected, for example. We might be interested in trade unions and any issues that they feel their members are currently facing. Technologies play a huge role in what we do in media and film because they change the nature of media and film so tremendously. We're always asking what's next for media, what's next for film, and that is often underpinned by the fast and frenetic pace of technological change. In our discipline, we're absolutely committed to asking questions. what's being communicated to us, who's communicating it, how are they communicating it, why are they communicating it, and with what effect. Who is that affecting? Why are they affected in that way? Was that the intention, or have they misunderstood? Has this communication been misdirected? Are there potential barriers or problems to communication? So if you're always asking questions, then this is the discipline for you. My son at the moment keeps telling me, I don't know is not an answer. And that seems particularly relevant for the study of media and film. And I'll come on to talk about intellectual curiosity a little bit later on. As academics, then, we are highly skilled in a range of approaches. We're formed by a variety of theoretical perspectives. I know some of you may already be studying A-level media or A-level film, so some of the theoretical perspectives that underpin our discipline may be familiar to you, perhaps Marxism, perhaps feminism, postmodernism even, but our discipline is also informed by new and emerging theoretical approaches. I'm working on some research at the moment, innovating post-queer theoretical approaches. I'm also interested in post-human theoretical approaches. Professor of Environmental Humanities, Professor John Parham, is interested in eco-critical theoretical perspectives. So some you may be familiar with and have heard of before, some may not be familiar to you that are new, innovative and emerging. As is a critical discipline, as I said, we're always asking questions, we're always evaluating, we're always thinking about the what ifs, the could ofs, the should ofs, the would ofs even. As academics, because we keep a keen eye on what's happening in the real world and the real world of creative and professional practice, we have some practical knowledge and understanding and often have a practical skill set as well as a traditional academic skill set. I myself have worked in advertising and digital marketing. I've worked in social media content creation and management, and also political online activism. So those practical experiences and those practical skills also inform the work that I do. We're often creative people as well. Not only in the practical projects which we may undertake, but in our thinking, the way we think about problem solving, the way we innovate, the way we respond to cultural innovations and cultural change is often creative, insightful and perceptive. And fundamentally, we are reflexive academics, okay? We not only think about asking questions of others, but we ask questions of ourselves. We're very critical and self-reflexive of our own experiences and of our own performances. Studying media and film then at university as an undergraduate, here's some of the types of things that you can expect from media and film undergraduate degree courses. These are the types of things that underpin many degree courses that are available to you. So these types of degrees will be asking questions of representation. We're interested in the way that the world is represented to potential audiences. And we're asking who creates this representation? How can we see their point of view or the creator's experience reflected in the representation? We look at how these representations are accounting for the individual and of society as a whole. We might be asking questions about who is there and how are they represented, but perhaps more interestingly, we'll be asking who is not there, who is not represented, and why is that? we're very much interested in the systems of representation, and that might be through analysing the style, type and form of language and the types of discourses that are used to articulate an experience or to represent an individual. But as I said earlier, we're also interested in visual signs and symbols. So we will often look at semiotic systems and think about how those signs and symbols are joined together to connote certain mythologies, ideologies, or expectations of the audience. Fundamentally, as a media and culture student, you're going to be interrogating the creation, circulation and manifestation of meanings. That is absolutely fundamental to our discipline. We'll be thinking about different readings of these representations, and these representations might come through TV, film, social media, immersive medias. We think about everything as a potential text. We think about all aspects of culture as a text to be decoded, interrogated, and to be read in some way. As a media and film undergraduate student, you'll also be introduced to cultural and media organisations, and we'll be thinking about how they operate within the political economy. And what we're talking about there is how different cultural institutions and/or media organisations fit into our social system and our social structure. What are the relationships there potentially with the government, with the law, with the financial system and our economy, even institutions such as education and religion? We'll be thinking about how these cultural and media organisations might provide evidence of a cultural economy, an economy which is perhaps based on the value of shared beliefs, of social capital, rather than just thinking about financial capital. Although when we think about the cultural economy, we might also think about how it is related to certain financial systems and its relationship with economics. And I'm thinking there about alternative cultures, maybe, such as particular fandoms, which often start out as niches, as small subcultural groups communicating amongst each other, sharing similar values, attitudes, beliefs and tastes outside of a dominant capitalist system. However, as those fandoms and subcultures grow and the capitalists catch on to this growing trend, they often then are taken over by capitalist organisations and industries and turned into economic commodities themselves. We're also interested in how we see certain cultural practices or rituals or changes reflected in policy and process, which might also affect how the media is run and operates. As I said, we're interested in signs and symbols, so we often ask questions about the aesthetics of things. Why do things look a certain way? What can we say about styles and tastes? What's in fashion and what's not? And who makes those judgments? So we'll be thinking about who are the trendsetters, who are the influencers in society, who's given that cultural capital, that social value. Why are we interested in what they have to say? Why are we interested in the creative content of some YouTubers, for example, who are just sitting in their bedrooms with no formal qualifications, yet they seem to be able to attract these huge followings of people? What gives them cultural value? What makes that meaningful to people? The meanings and practices of everyday life are central to what we do as media and film academics. Why and how is life experienced and how is it understood? We'll be looking at a range of media and cultural artifacts. So I've mentioned TV as an example. I've mentioned obviously film, but we will also be looking at a range of different media and cultural artifacts. Maybe you're interested in music and a particular genre of music. It may be that you're interested in podcasts. I've mentioned YouTube channels. We look at different types and forms of social media. We look at different types and forms of immersive media. But we're also interested in cultural experiences. So food, for example, is a text to be analysed. Festivals and celebrations and cultural rituals are also to be investigated. We're interested in changes in form and genre. So, for example, you might be particularly interested in comedy as a form and genre. We will interrogate how that genre has changed and adapted through its very early iterations, even before the 18th century, right up to contemporary manifestations of that genre. And particularly if we're thinking about the example of comedy, how might cancel culture and the rise in cancel culture change comedy and the way it communicates and its purpose? Cultural change is very important for what we do as media and film academics. We're interested in the developments in society and cultures and why that is. Why is it that things shift and change in the way they do? Why is it and how is it that people develop new ways of thinking and understanding the world? Is that informed by law, by politics, by the internet, for example? My students are particularly interested in at the moment in the post-pandemic future and how that might manifest itself and how that might lead to long-term cultural and societal shifts. Another group of my students are investigating currently the gender climate and representations of gender equality in a post-#MeToo context, for example. As I said, technologies are changing all the time. That affects culture. Industries change, form and genres change, people change. So that's very interesting to us. We're also interested in the audience and what we mean by audience, different definitions of the audience and different audiences. So we're very interested in specific demographics of people and how that changes their relationship to the media and their place and position in society. So that might be investigating issues of age, class, gender, sexuality, ethnicity, disability, for example. And we'll be thinking about how is it that those specific features of their life affect the way they consume and receive media and film artifacts. How and why is it that people respond to this type of stimulus in this type of way? Our discipline is informed by reception theory and reception models, which again you might be familiar with from your A-level study. Things such as Stuart Hall's encoding and decoding model, for example, and or the uses and gratifications theory. Another key aspect of a media and film undergraduate degree is going to be questions of identity. And remember I said a little while ago, we as academics are critically self-reflexive. So when we think about the theories and critical approaches that underpin the construction, negotiation and manifestation of the self, we're also thinking about how that relates to us, our identities, our experiences. We'll be asking questions of ourselves. How do I construct my identity? How and why do I negotiate it in certain ways on certain social media platforms, for example? How does my identity manifest itself online as compared to in the real world, for example? So you will have to be prepared to talk about your own opinions, your own experiences, your own expectations, and your own roles, personae, and masks. We love to have social, cultural, and political debate in our discipline. So a media and film undergraduate student has got to be prepared to share their opinions, share their ideas, share their thoughts, and that might be on any theme, topic, or issue of the past, present, or future. So we might be asking questions around how far has feminism come since second wave feminism, for example, considering that there is still a gender pay gap. We might be asking, is it ethical to ask companies to reveal their equal pay statistics? If it is, why it is. We might be looking at certain things that are controversial. So I mentioned cancel culture. We might be looking at certain types of activism. For example, thinking about Extinction Rebellion and whether their modes and methods and tactics of activism are justified in the context of raising awareness and making definite social cultural change around the environmental crisis. So to be a media and film undergraduate student, you've got to be aware of what's going on in the world. You've got to take a real interest in what's going on today and how contemporary culture and society has been informed by our past histories, law changes, social changes, cultural shifts, and also be very aware and alert to innovations and things that might potentially affect us in the future. Hopefully you can see then that our discipline asks questions around systems of power and inequality, and we're very much interested in interrogating ideology and the concept of alternative ideologies. And if there are alternative ideologies, do they have a place and a space to be represented in different forms of media and or the film industry? So studying at university then, this is the kind of thing that you can expect, which I've kind of already alluded to in some of what I've said. You will be expected to engage in a lot of discussion and a lot of debate. The idea that we as academics or lecturers stand at the front lecturing you and you passively take it in and take down lots and lots of notes is really an old-fashioned model now. We don't really work in that way at university anymore. We'll stand at the front perhaps and give you some stimuli, some material to get you going. That material might be case study material. It might be a journal article. Well, what we want you to do is interrogate that stimulus, have a discussion about it, be prepared to engage in some kind of debate, share your point of view, and perhaps relate this to your own experience. And that's where that critical self-reflection comes in again. How did you respond to this stimulus material? How does it affect you? Does it reflect your experience, your opinion, your point of view? Do you accept what is being presented to you? We love a challenge. We love you to ask us questions and challenge the material that we provide to you. I mentioned earlier this idea of having a genuine intellectual curiosity. And I said our types of undergraduates look at the world and they don't take anything for granted. They're not prepared to accept what they see, hear and experience around them in the film industry, in different forms of media, in culture as a whole. They're genuinely intellectually curious. They're constantly asking questions. They're constantly interrogating things that are presented to us and represented to us as normal, as a representation of everyday life. They'll be asking why this is, how this is, who is this communicating to? Why was it communicated in this way? So you've got to be prepared to sort of interrogate, to explore, to ask questions. And that will hopefully take you on and spur you on to your own research journey. There's a lot of scope in our discipline to develop your own research interests based on those questions that you want to ask. So, for example, I might give my students some stimulus material on reality TV. Reality TV in its different forms, reality TV as a genre and its historical context and development. We might look at a specific example of reality TV, such as Big Brother, perhaps as an iconic example. Some of my students might really respond to that. That might really pique their interest. And that sets them on their own research journey into investigating reality TV in the future. Is YouTube a form of reality TV, perhaps? Maybe they're particularly interested in the Real Housewives of Atlanta, and that as an example of reality TV. So as I say, there's a lot of scope in our discipline to really investigate and interrogate your own research interests. As I said then, that means that our lectures are very interactive and dynamic. It's not a case, as I say, of me or my colleagues, or in fact any academic, standing at the front, lecturing to you, and you passively accepting what we say and regurgitating that in an essay. No, we want you to ask questions, we want you to challenge us, we want you to talk about your own opinions and your own experiences. We also want you to work with your peers. As an undergraduate student, you're going to have to do various different forms of group work, formally and informally. We think that is absolutely vital to our discipline because we learn about other cultures and other experiences from hearing those from the words of other people, from the horse's mouth, so to speak. So we hope that students will learn from each other, broaden their horizons, develop their critical and conceptual thinking, having had to reflect on not only their own experiences, but how that relates to the experiences of others. Most people have a certain perception of what an academic is. Largely that perception conforms to a white male middle class patriarchal perception of the academy and academia. And a lot of my students are very interested to hear of the backgrounds of the people that I work with and my colleagues and my experience, because we're not all white, we're not all men, we're not all from middle class backgrounds, and we're certainly not interested in replicating patriarchal ideologies. Okay, so we will share our experiences, our roles, our personae with you, and we expect you to do that in return with us and with your peers. We will also, whilst you're at university, you can expect to take part in workshops. So it might be that we ask you to look at a journal article in your own time, and we will ask you to come back into the classroom then and work within a group to talk about that journal article. And we might then ask you to teach another group about the journal article that you've been asked to read. So interrogating that journal article or whatever that stimulus material is. It might be that you bring to that workshop a creative or practical assignment or idea that you're working on. And again, your tutors will give you feedback on that. You can also respond to peer feedback. We think that's very important. And at university as well, a lot of support in sort of completing independent tasks and completing assignments is given through one-to-one or group tutorials. And in a post-pandemic context, they can be face-to-face or online. Okay, I'm just... Okay, so you'll be developing a lot of skills then. Our subject is a formally, traditionally academic subject in that it is informed by research, and research can be interpreted in many different ways. So you can go away and conduct some secondary research, that is by locating published scholarly material, whether that be specific academic textbooks or peer-reviewed journal articles, or you might be conducting your own primary research. Are you conducting a textual, semiotic, close reading analysis of a specific cultural artifact, media text or film? Or are you doing some primary audience research? Some of our students go away and do questionnaires and focus groups, interviews, for example. So the range of research methodologies is very broad, and as a result, students of our discipline develop highly competent and diverse research skills. Of course, because this is a traditionally academic subject, this discipline is largely sort of situated in writing essays. And as an undergraduate student, you will develop those skills of how to structure an academic research essay and how to write a convincing academic, justified and sustained argument. I mentioned you're going to have to do group work, and there will be various instances where you collaborate with others, but also take a leadership role perhaps. You're very often going to have to do presentations, formally and informally. We think that that is very important because that's often something students are quite anxious or nervous about. They're fearful of public speaking. But if you go back to what I said about our discipline being informed by the real world, we know that graduates of this discipline are going to have to give presentations in any field or industry that they work in, and I'll talk about those in a little minute. And we know that they're going to have to be confident, articulate speakers, and that's why there will be a lot of presentations. You'll also have the opportunity to complete practical and creative projects. And our students of this discipline develop expertise in digital skills. You might be asked to make films, for example, or podcasts or websites or animations, for example. There are a lot of transferable skills that underpin this discipline. You're going to be communicating in lots of different modes, interpersonally and personally, whether that be written or spoken, whether that be as an individual or in a team. You're going to develop skills in time management and organisation. Because of the creative and practical elements that are involved in these courses, and because we're thinking about future innovations, you're going to be developing skills in creative problem solving. Alongside teamwork, doing any kind of degree demands that you develop independence, that you are prepared to take ownership of your own learning and your own development. And as a result of that, that you develop your own confidence and your own self-esteem. We often find that students of this discipline do get a real self-esteem boost because they do have to articulate themselves very early on to whole groups and in small groups, because they have to do group work, because they have to do presentations, because they have to engage in critical self-reflection. We find that students of this discipline really do get a boost in confidence and self-esteem. So I said I'd come on to future careers, and I've listed down here the most popular ones and perhaps the ones that you are expecting to see. And you know, they're kind of in popularity order without me really intending to do that. So particularly our graduates go on to advertising, particularly marketing, social media management, content creation. So thinking about how social media is used strategically as an advertising and marketing tool, how it's used for branding, how it's used as a tool for community management, for example. Some of our students go on to careers in PR and journalism. Again, because we find our students develop skills in time management, organisation and independence, our students go on to work in events management and project management. We find that because of our work and our study of society and culture, that some of our students will go on to careers in teaching, publishing, the charity sector or the arts sector, so working with museums and art galleries. We've noticed recently, though, that the creative and technology industries are changing, and as I said, our discipline is informed by those real world practices and changes. So more recently, and perhaps because of the post-pandemic context, we've noticed that a lot of our graduates are having to innovate in terms of their own sort of career and their own strategic career planning. So our students, because of the creative and innovative nature of some of what we do, are very entrepreneurial. So we've had some recent graduates who create content and are being approached by larger organisations in advertising or marketing or PR, for example, for their content and being asked to produce content as a freelancer, for example. We've also had students have had to demonstrate a huge amount of resilience because of the pandemic and realising that there is no straightforward path into a career. And that perhaps growing even more so is this idea of a portfolio career, where our graduates are having to capitalise on all of the opportunities that they are presented with. So juggling multiple options, multiple jobs, roles, career paths simultaneously at the same time. And of course, some graduates are very inspired by what they've investigated or been exposed to while studying their degree, and they'll go on to further postgraduate study, whether that's at master's level or an MRes, which is a master's in research, which will then lead on to a PhD potentially. We've also had students go on to do a law conversion postgraduate course. So I've outlined what you can expect generally. I just wanted to highlight some touch points that are very specific to our course here at Worcester. So if you choose to apply for our course, you have an idea of what you're getting, so to speak. And I've identified some of the key strands that inform our undergraduate course here specifically. So we do a lot of work around screen studies, as an emerging sort of discipline within media and film as an academic field. So we're not just interested in TV and film, but we're also interested in digital content such as social media, which I've mentioned, but also streaming services. We're interested in specific genres and forms. So some of our tutors have expertise in horror, for example. Some of our tutors are experts in the representations of heroes and villains. One of our key strands is media futures. So as I said, our course is very dynamic. It's changing all the time. In fact, I'm just writing some curriculum rewrites right now, which will come into effect in 2023. Should you choose to apply, based on what's happening right now in media industries. So thinking about new and emerging audio cultures and the effect that podcasting has had, changes to the music industry. I'm doing some research and work right now on NFTs, non-fungible tokens. I'm also doing some work that will inform our curriculum going forward on immersive media. So augmented realities, artificial intelligence, robotics, virtual realities, and mixed reality. We have a very strong thread on our course about representation. We're interested in identities and diversity and asking those questions which I mentioned earlier about who is represented but who is not and why that might be. There is also a very strong thread around cultures and cultural change. We're very aware of, in order to sort of decolonize our curriculum and to be representative of various different identities, that we shouldn't just be talking about British and American cultures and representations. So our practice is informed by world cultures, world rituals and celebrations, folklores and myths. We have a really interesting, innovative module on cultural festivals, which is tied into the Literature and Film Festival here at Worcester. That obviously affects how we study industries. Of course, we do work around British and classical Hollywood, but we're also interested in emerging industries and global industries in and around the world and their cultural artifacts and representations. Another one of our strong suits is political, social and cultural issues. Inequalities is a big issue that informs our curriculum here. We're particularly interested in the emerging experiences and histories of the LGBTQIA+ community, and also the environmental crisis. I think really importantly, from year 1 to all the way to year 3, we have a really strong thread on work-based learning. So we get our students in the very first year to start thinking about their futures and what they aspire to do, to research potential careers, to start developing a strategic career plan, to think about their personal development and what they need to do outside of the classroom, outside of their degree, to meet those aspirations. And in the second year, we offer our students the option of studying a work project module where you can go out on placement and get some work experience. Our course at Worcester is available as a single honours, so you can study media and culture single honours, or you can study media and culture with a range of other joint pathways. Film studies is only offered as a joint pathway, so some of the joints that our students do include joints with creative writing, sociology, English literature, journalism, for example. Our teaching here at Worcester is inspired by our research. So all of your lecturers, all of your tutors are active researchers in the field of media, culture and film. And I've just listed some of our research topics there. I've recently had published a chapter on queer identities and trans identities and how that experience is communicated through autobiographical YouTube videos. I'm currently working on a chapter on deepfake technology and how it might be used as geopolitical propaganda. I'm working on another chapter at the moment on DIY intersectional feminism. And I'm very interested also in social media performance and creative writing, because I'm a poet, and in the pandemic I couldn't go out and perform any of my poetry. So I use my YouTube channel, and I've recently had published a chapter on how artists, creatives can use multimedia formats as a way of disseminating their work. Our admissions tutor, Holly Barnes-Bennett's research is on sexuality and sexual communication and how we can use digital technologies and social media as a form of activism. Dr. Barbara Mitra is particularly interested in the connection between gender identity and social media. She's currently doing some research on body image and body dysmorphia. I mentioned Professor John Parham earlier. His particular research area is the environmental humanities, and he is the lead editor on a scholarly peer-reviewed journal at the leading edge of environmental representation and activism called Green Letters. And we also have Dr. Simon Hardy on our team, who is interested in the representation and history of sexuality, and also the representation of war and conflict in documentary and in journalism. Specific to our course then, these are questions that I often get asked at open days. I get asked about the types and forms of assessment. You are not going to have to complete any exams for our course should you choose to apply and undertake our degree here at Worcester. We don't think that that is an effective form of assessment. Learning and teaching research shows us that that's a demotivator for students, so we've got rid of them. But here are some of the things you can expect. I've mentioned traditional academic research essays. We might ask you to do reports, which are slightly different documents, which include subheadings, graphs, tables, for example. You're going to be asked to pursue your own independent research projects, most notably the third-year dissertation project. You will be asked to complete practical portfolios. So as I said, you might be asked to complete a website, and on that website, we've asked you to embed video, podcast, animation, for example. So you can see there how we're assessing creative tasks. I mentioned presentations earlier. We've recently included roundtable discussions as a type of assessment. So we will give our students what we call a provocation, which is a theme or focus for the discussion. And they go away and they research it, and at a certain time, on a certain day, they will come together and have that discussion. And it is up to them to lead, manage and negotiate that discussion within the time frame on the day. So there are lots of transferable skills that we think our students are having the opportunity of developing there, which is why we've included them as a form of assessment. And I've already mentioned the work project opportunity, which is delivered in the second year. Our students find a potential placement provider. They negotiate real work. So there's no photocopying or making the tea here. It's real world work, and that forms their work project. And that is assessed through critical evaluation of that experience. Here at Worcester then, here's some of the things that you can expect outside of your formal degree or outside of the classroom. You will have access to a personal academic tutor who will help guide you through your 3 years at Worcester. maybe helping you develop that strategic career plan, maybe thinking about what you need to do to develop certain skills or negotiate certain experiences. You can come to your personal academic tutor for personal support and advice. And we're not experts on everything, we don't profess to be, but there is expertise and support available, which we might signpost you to through First Point. So First Point can give and provide our students with professional advice and expertise related to finances, housing, it may be to do with mental health and well-being. On our course here at Worcester, we have buddy mentors. So they are students who have volunteered to mentor other students. So the first year mentor is a second year student. The second year mentor is a third year student, and the third year students are mentored by our most recent graduates, our recent alumni. And we think that fosters really good course community and course cohesion so that our students have a really good peer support network. Here at Worcester, we also create opportunities for our students to become research partners. So as I said, we as lecturers and academics are active researchers, and we might make opportunities available that students can apply for to help assist us in certain parts and components of our research. There are lots of clubs and societies and supporting activities going on here at Worcester through the Students' Union. They organise social events, but we as a course in media and culture and in film organise our own course-related social events. Again, because we think that's really important for our students, and particularly realised how important it was during the pandemic lockdowns. They may be pub quizzes, they may be, we went on a ghost walk, we went to a virtual reality gaming arcade, we went and saw the latest James Bond film in 4DX. So there's some of the social things that we put on. In our discipline, we also put on careers events. We think it's really important to provide our students with opportunities to hear from actual working professionals and to network with them. In fact, we had an online careers event last week where we had successful professionals from the creative and tech industries talking to our students, and obviously our students could ask them questions. We run a range of trips and visits. That includes some of those social events that I've just mentioned. So sometimes they are subsidised, but also to National Trust properties, to museums, to galleries. Obviously, we had to put a pause on our international trips, but we think going on trips abroad is very important for informing our cultural knowledge and understanding. So the most recent one was in Berlin. We have a really vibrant international exchange community here. So although the formal Erasmus programme is no longer running because of Brexit, we still have relationships with universities in Europe and beyond who are prepared to take our students for a whole semester so you can learn abroad. Our Hive library is very innovative because it is accessible to the public as well as to our students. And we not only use it as a resource, but we access it online all the time through the e-resources, and we use it as an event space. The arena is our sporting facility, which is very unique in the fact that it was specifically designed with wheelchair and disability access in mind. You might choose, if you're a student here at Worcester, to complete the Worcester Award, which involves doing some things outside of your degree, including perhaps charity work or volunteering, takes account of any work experience you've done. Basically, you accrue a certain number of hours in certain areas and you can be awarded the silver, bronze, gold or platinum Worcester Award, which will be added to your transcript. And I think that's it. I was whittling through at the end there because I saw that time was running away with me. So I'm more than happy to answer any of your questions now. I will try and stop presenting so I can see the chat function.
Katy, I'd just like to thank you so much for such a comprehensive sort of run through the most fascinating course, but also the importance of, I think, the way in which students actually are encouraged to think on this course, but also about life in general, and it's very stimulating. Thank you. If students would like to put anything in the chat, then please do so. I can see that we have got one student typing. Just in the meantime, one of the things that I would like to ask, if you could just develop a little, is perhaps what preparation students can do, both for their application, but really more than that, just in terms of how they can start thinking about things a little differently, because it seems that it's such a change of mindset, and so much of what you talked about is about expansive thinking and thinking differently. Yeah. Perhaps you could just talk about how students could prepare.
Okay. Yeah, two things I would say is crucial to that. Challenge everything. Don't take anything for granted. Be that annoying person, that irritating person who asks questions everywhere they go. You know, I'll never forget my friends and family saying to me, "Oh, shut up, Katy," because I was always the person coming out the cinema going, "Yeah, but what about this? What about this? What about this? What about this?" Right? So challenge everything. Don't accept anything as the norm. Don't take anything for granted. If you start thinking in that way, you'll be taking the right kinds of steps. We want to be interrogating what we see and interrogating our experiences and interrogating the world around us. The second thing I would say that you could do is throw yourself in at the deep end and do things that you wouldn't normally do. Take risks, okay? Be that person who goes to see the film that you think is a bit weird or a bit odd, or the film that you wouldn't normally choose to watch, okay? Or it may be, you know, the idea of going to a virtual reality gaming arcade terrifies you. Do it anyway. Be that person, okay? Be the person who takes opportunities as they present themselves and take risks. Do something different, right? We are in such a privileged position, really, in the world and society that we live in, that there is so much available to us just through our smartphones, okay? So be the person who does something different. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. And I think that's really helpful. And I think it is kind of looking at the world a bit differently. And as you say, challenging both yourself and things that you come across, asking perhaps subject teachers in lessons, perhaps challenging some of those ideas, obviously in a respectful manner, but challenging them and thinking a little differently. That's brilliant. And I noticed, and we put up there, which Faye, my colleague, has very kindly put up there about yourself, and you've obviously developed your own talents as well as you know, teaching. Is there a sort of a merit in students putting themselves sort of forward in terms of developing blogs and things like that? Is that the kind of thing that would help too?
Absolutely. I think in thinking about your application, firstly, as I say, if you're asking questions and you're taking risks, that will give you collateral to talk about in your personal statement, you know, reflecting on those experiences. But if also you've taken risks to develop your own skills by starting your own website, that's very easy to do with open source free software such as WordPress. You can start your own website, be putting on reviews of things that you've seen or experienced on there, responding to what you see and hear in the news, responding to what you see fed to you through social media algorithms. You know, we can see there that you're asking questions, that you're being evaluative, and that you've taken that opportunity to develop your own practical skills. I'd say here at Worcester, our Media and Culture and Film Studies degree are traditionally and formally academic, in that they are probably 75% sort of research-led theory, critical analysis. and 25% that creative practical component. But you can find undergraduate degree courses where the weighting shifts, where it's 75% practical and 25% theoretical and critical. And students should do the work and do the research to find the type of course that's going to suit them the best.
That's really helpful. And I think that is a critical element, isn't it? That some courses are far more sort of academic and research based, and some are far more practical, where students might be creating things and performing and things. So there's obviously a range of university courses, and it is right to research those to provide the best possible basis for a successful university time, I guess. Absolutely. Which is allied to your personal strengths, if you like. Ravi has just said, forgive me if this was already mentioned, but career paths, I think that was mentioned actually, and it says, do people who take it mostly seek to work in film, etc., or are there other avenues? And I think actually from the slides that you provided, which Ravi we will circulate, there was actually quite a comprehensive section on career paths. And I know, Katy, that you've expanded on some of that, but I think from a personal point of view, our students who've come from King Edward's and gone on to study at Worcester in particular, and we know quite a few of those, have gone into a completely sort of multi-layer, different types of things, using the techniques and the understanding and the questioning and the kind of analytical approaches that you encourage in a whole range of careers. Am I right with that?
Absolutely right. And you know what, I can honestly say to you that the media, creative and tech industries are growing. They're expanding. That's despite the pandemic. I heard that from the horse's mouth themselves after that careers talk with those successful professionals last week. The professionals were telling me these industries are wide open for our graduates. OK, so to answer your question, Ravi, you know, students may come in aspiring to work in the film industry. Let's be honest, no one's completing their degree and going straight to work for Hollywood, particularly in the pandemic when the industry has been flooded with people who have unfortunately lost their jobs, right? So this is why I mentioned earlier this idea of having a portfolio career. You know, you might aspire to write the next big Hollywood blockbuster, right? You're not going to be able to do that straight away. Right? Doesn't mean you won't get there in the future, but you've got to think about alternative pathways of getting there. OK, so one of the creatives that I was speaking to last week works in immersive technologies. In his company, they create, using gaming software, immersive experiences, mixed reality experiences for their clients, for big brands like Mercedes, he was giving us an example of. What he needs, though, he's the technical person. He needs someone to write the story behind that. So maybe you're not going to get the career straight away writing the next Hollywood blockbuster, but you could start utilising your skills by writing for immersive media experiences and building up your skill set, building up your professional network that might lead to working in the film industry later on.
That's really helpful, and I think from our experience for Faye and myself and the careers team, I think we would very much encourage students to look at a full range of careers, which, as you say, in a portfolio context, can actually bring, I think, students into a much broader range of career pathways. And actually, it doesn't stop anybody reaching their possible end game. It's about being a bit more creative on the route through, and gaining some credibility whilst doing so as well, which is really helpful. Now, I know that Ravi's still typing, but we are going to have to draw to a close in a moment. I think that's great. Thank you, Ravi, that you've put there that you appreciate that. Katy, it's been a real pleasure to listen to you, and I know students will benefit, both those on the meeting and the ones that we should be circulating to later. And I know that we're hoping that we shall be developing some things in the curriculum here at the college with yourself and your colleagues, and we very much look forward to that exposure as well, to all that you have to offer and have to develop with our students. So thank you for your time this evening, and thank you to students for joining us. We will circulate everything, and if anybody has any further questions, I hope, Katy, you won't mind if we email you with those later.
I was just going to say, I didn't show the slide, but I've put all the possible ways you can contact me there. You've got my direct university email. It does come direct to me. Feel free to connect with me on Twitter, send me direct messages, ask me questions. Interrogate me about my course, interrogate me about personal statements, interrogate me about jobs. I said ask questions, so ask them. And if you want to find out more, you can also find me on YouTube. So yes, please do keep in touch with me and ask questions.
That's lovely. Thank you so much for your time,
Thank
Katy.
you.
It's a real pleasure to see you. Thank you.
And you, take care. Bye-bye.